Welcome to the Expert CRE Secrets podcast, where we believe most commercial real estate brokers and luxury agents struggle with clarifying their passive income options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven brokerage strategy, such as the EXP commercial model, and purchasing investment real estate is the best way for you to grow your wealth. Hey, I'm your host, Brett Swarts, and each episode I'm joined by some of the best commercial real estate brokers, real estate agents, passive income wealth advisors, and business minds in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together we can make complex brokerage strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. We're also streaming live at capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, and you can find that on YouTube as well. I'm excited about our next guest. He is focused on all things remote working, right? He's the founder and CEO and a keynote speaker, and a flexible work expert. In fact, he is the CEO of Alliance Group of Companies, an experienced speaker, strategist, entrepreneur. And since 1979, he's been building flexible workspace companies under the Alliance brand and its predecessor companies, focusing on new ways of working that generally meet the needs of today's entrepreneurs and combining three fundamental components: people, place, and technology. This conversation probably can't be more timely, right? Given everything that's been going on with COVID-19. I'm excited to have Frank Cottle with me. Frank, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing just fine. Thank you, Brett. Looking forward to our conversation.
Excellent. For our listeners to get to know you for the first time, would you give us a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Oh, well, my story is probably like most entrepreneurs. I've had a variety of companies through the years. Our current company structure actually started almost 42 years ago. In your sector, in your core sector, in commercial real estate, we were a property company that built up a land banking theory for investment, where we would buy a piece of property on the edge of a large master plan development, and where we had excess entitlement. So I might build a 50,000 foot building, but I had 500,000 feet of rights to build on the property that we took up. And we worked with Chevron Land, Mobile Land, Prudential Land, Trammell Crow, the Irvine Company, Boston Properties, ING, Summit Properties, all the big guys across California, Arizona, and Texas. And what we built were freestanding properties, custom-built properties to host and house what were then called executive suites of that era. And those suites were a little bit ahead of our time because we were very technology-oriented. We learned to run executive suites, which at the time, and I think still today, what you see co-working and business centers still generate the most revenue per square foot of any commercial office model in existence. So that's where we started. We sold that portfolio in 1990 and started a new portfolio of leased properties on a nationwide basis, myself and two other partners, and we built 195 projects during the years of 1990 to 2000, and then sold that portfolio. The reason I wanted to sell that portfolio was, honestly, I wanted to own the customer, but not the facilities anymore. Technology had bitten me, and it seemed that Expedia looked a lot better as a business model than Marriott, if you get the drift. And so we have migrated ourselves today to managing global portfolios for companies of all sizes. We have operations in 54 countries from 1,300 facilities through Alliance Virtual. And our publication, All Work, reaches about 33 million people a month now, focused on the future of work.
Amazing. I want to dive into the biggest secret to striking the perfect balance with remote working, with people, place, and technology, especially as it pertains to this new environment. We're going to dive that here in a minute, but I want to take one other step back, Frank. I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life, and perhaps I want you to think about the earlier days, maybe the days when you were in college, or maybe as a teenager, or perhaps even university, right? Or early days of your career. And I think we've been given certain gifts, and some people call them strengths or superpowers. I believe they're God-given gifts, and these gifts have been given to us to be a blessing and help to others. So I'm curious, what are those one or two gifts that you believe you were given, and how does that help how you help and bless people today?
Well, I'll use my college experience as an example of that. I was actually kicked out of college. I think 1968, 69 as being sort of turbulent years for a lot of students. And so I was asked to leave the college where I'd been attending. And I went down and spent some time without my parents knowing it, living in the Bahamas, working as a commercial diver. When I came back and had been kicked out of college, I had to face my dad, who had been paying for the whole thing the whole time I was gone. And it was a very expensive private college. And my dad was we come from old farming and ranching and family. And he looked at me and he said, well, I guess, you got kicked out of school. And he said, did you learn anything? And I said, quite simply, yes, so that decisions have consequences. And he simply said, good, and walked away. And I think that one point was very pivotal to me, to recognize that the decisions that we all make every day, they do have consequences. Everything you do has a consequence. And to lead your life around recognizing your decision-making process and to not be paralyzed by the consequences, but to actually take and make decisions is a critical part of business growth.
Excellent. So having the wisdom, I'd say, to recognize when you made a mistake and to shift and change because decisions have consequences. Is that a fair summary?
Well, I think so a little bit. I went on from there to become a commercial diver and worked for a couple of years for one of our, as a contractor to one of our federal agencies, and did kind of some interesting work for a couple of years, and then got married. And my wife and I decided that the interesting work wasn't a good long-time career. So I started racing yachts instead, and raced sailboats and yachts, and worked with another team to build a very large yacht brokerage between 70 and 80, which is what I exited when we started this company.
Okay, so I think I've captured it then. I think it's this. It's adapting and building, and perhaps in new circumstances, which is going to connect this whole thing with this remote. So your ability to create something on, perhaps you were planning on going to college, to do the traditional route, things go haywire, you get kicked out of college, you're in the Bahamas, and you're going to see that as an opportunity to adapt and to learn and to grow something. Is that a fair summary?
I guess so. I don't know that I fit a lot of molds, honestly. I just do what I want and enjoy it and find things that are challenging. And then I think a perseverance, sticking at it. Nothing is easy if you're really going to get good at it. And you have to learn. And one of the things that I tell people in our company, and one of the things that I tell people when they ask, kind of the question you're asking about me, is how do I see myself? And I just really want to be the very best student of our industry. I want to learn every day and be able to apply what I learn. And I think that constant quest for knowledge is really what drives me more than anything else.
Beautiful. Now dive in right into a good way to dive right into the topic here, right? So COVID-19 hits, right? You've been in the industry obviously for so long. Student of the game, a leader of perhaps of the industry in a lot of ways, right? And this thing hits, and it's like you've been prepared to help people make this shift and this transition. So I don't necessarily want to talk about remote working so much as I want to focus on what have you learned in this past 18 months, and what does the entrepreneur, does the small business owner, does the large company, what's the biggest secret right now to remote working that you've learned in the last 18 months?
Well, I think first let's define a little bit about agility and remote work. get some common ground here. IDC said in 2019, they forecasted before the pandemic that there would be 1.8 billion remote workers by the year 2020. Little did they know, right? And they define a remote worker as those individuals which work 2 days or more outside of their primary workplace on a permanent basis. So Mondays and Fridays from home, if you will. Tuesdays and Wednesdays maybe from a Starbucks or a co-working center or a business center, or maybe in partnership with a joint venture partner at their office. A minimum of 2 days a week. 1.8 billion people. That's fully almost half of our entire workforce globally. So the issue around remote work isn't a COVID issue. It's a tectonic change that we're going through as we learn to recast how we use technology, how we create jobs, the social contract between an employer and an employee, what it means overall, how technology doesn't have borders as we've had. The concept of place is where you are, not where your boss thinks you should be. All of these things evolve together to be a massive, as I say, tectonic level shift in the way we do business. And in the future, it will grow even more quickly.
Very well said. Wow, a lot there. So yeah, 1.8 billion. That's staggering to think about. 2 more days outside of the primary workplace. It's about half of the entire workplace, and it's already been going on, right? I guess the perfect storm has already been happening, and perhaps COVID just either shined a light on it or maybe accelerated certain aspects of it. What's been the one aspect you feel like COVID has actually accelerated for remote working? And how does the entrepreneur or the corporation take advantage of that?
Well, it's a balancing act, and everything that has to do with remote work had been going on for a number of years. And let's go back to 16, 17, 18, a time period. There was a massive battle going on for talent. How do we find the best people in the world to work for our company, for your company, for Microsoft, for Google, for every major employer worldwide? Big battle for talent. And what the HR departments found within those companies, the larger ones in particular, that they couldn't attract talent unless they had a remote or flexible workplace plan already. So everybody knew this. And, you've probably heard the old saying, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Well, every company was actually trying to come up with the perfect plan. And what COVID did was kicked everybody through across the threshold of their own decision making. And now good was good enough. And so everybody started putting into place plans they had already thought about, but not really enacted. And so now execution became more valuable and more important than planning. And that's really what has occurred. The outcome of that will be, again, massive. I think I read a report the other day that said 41% of the people that are currently employed by, I think they're referring to the technology and the financial sector, will not come back to work. They will change their jobs. They will quit their jobs if they're forced to come back to the office 5 days a week. So we talk about the Great Recession. Now we're talking about the Great Resignation as an issue that employers have to face. JP Morgan, I think it was, just announced that for their starting analysts, they were raising their salary rates for people that came back to the office from $75,000 to $100,000 a year. That's a 25% increase in compensation to get people back to the office. And that's, again, amazing.
Amazing.
I don't think it'll work, by the way. I don't think it will work for them.
Wow.
I think they'll still end up having people outside, but
Wow, Frank, so much wisdom there. By the way, you can find more about Frank Cottle at allwork.space. That's allwork.space. I want to unpack a little bit of that and then ask a follow-up question here. I think the most staggering stat you mentioned is 41% will quit if forced to go back 5 days of work per week per in the office per week, right? And because it's a new normal, a new, like you said, tectonic shift in lifestyle and time and energy. And I know for myself and my family, right? I have 5 children, my wife and I, and 2 companies, 2 podcasts, and we're going, very, very, let's say, at a rapid pace. And our team works remote, right? And it's a way to get time and energy back and lower stress. And I mean, so many things there. I'm sure there's pros and cons on both sides, but I can tell you, I would be part of that 141%. Like, I don't ever want to be forced to have to go back to working in an environment which was not flexible. So that is amazing. Yeah, no longer the Great Depression, the Great Resignation. So let's talk about the companies that are doing it the best. Now let's make it very practical for folks. So given all of that stats and all of the current conditions, what are the best doing with allwork.space and how you're helping your clients and customers serve their teams with remote working? Frank, what's the first step to clarifying or getting on the right side of these things?
Well, I think as the battle for talent is quite evident, that also all business is run by its access to capital. And this shift will have a profound effect on companies, particularly large public companies, access to capital in the future. And you say, well, how is that going to happen? So just in your mind, consider for a moment a simple conversation between the CEO and the CFO of any Fortune 1000 company yesterday, 6 months ago, whenever, walking through their corporate headquarters together. And they walk through the corporate headquarters and they recognize that there's nobody there. They have 100,000 square feet of space in Midtown Manhattan, and there's nobody there. And the CEO says, wow. And the CFO says, hey, but don't worry about it. The company's doing fine. And they look at each other and they kind of laugh and they just laugh again. And then, we don't need this stuff. We don't need it. So now that 100,000 feet, they relook at that and they say, okay, lease is up on that next month. Let's renew it. Let's drop it down to 50,000 feet. Well, 50,000 feet's worth of expenses on a 10 or a 20-year lease just went off their balance sheet. Lease is a debt. It's a debt side of your balance sheet. Now they have all that new freedom from debt that allows them to raise more capital for business growth. The property company, on the other hand, is staring at a 50,000-foot vacancy factor there. And go to the 2 days a week for a second. If everybody in Manhattan in 2019, in 2021, if they all just work 1 day a week from home, that's a 20% vacancy factor. 2 days a week from home, that's a 40% vacancy factor. So start looking at large cities, central business districts, primarily the ones that are fed by commuters, particularly those that are fed by public transit commuting. And that's where you'll see the biggest, most dynamic changes in the repurposing of a lot of commercial real estate. That big tower, a 50-floor tower, is going to be 40% empty. They're going to convert it to residential. What else are they going to do with it? Okay, business won't grow fast enough to absorb it, so they're going to convert a big percentage of that to residential, which means that in the future, more of the people that work in this city will actually live in the city, and that will change all variety of dynamics in all aspects of real estate that you deal with: commercial, retail, restaurant. All aspects of real estate will be repurposed and changed around this again, adaptation for flexible workplace overall.
Got it. Okay. So if I'm gathering it, you're saying looking at this as an opportunity, right, to cut expenses dramatically, right, by either completely giving up your leases or half, cutting it in half and saving a big capital expense right there, to be able to invest into talent and to be able to invest into the growth of the things that really drive the bottom line. Is that a fair summary, Frank?
Well, yeah, and that goes out to all shareholder value issues. So in the future, I don't think you'll see large corporates building the same monuments to themselves in the form of office space, so much as trying to build flexible cultures with really superior staff working where they want to work, living where they want to live, and having a much more agile workplace overall. We've been seeing a migration that direction, and again, and the change has been made. And if you think of change, if you were to go through any program with the most hardened addicts or alcoholics, and you go through that program successfully for 12 months, your recidivism is only going to be about 10%. So you have just gone through 12 to 18 months of absolute change in every aspect of a person's life and habit. And your case of recidivism to the let's get back to the way we used to do it is going to be minimal. So
it was such a big point there, by the way. 12 to 18 months of absolute change, right, and habits and work from home and everything else, right? And you mentioned if you compare that to an addict for like the Alcoholic Anonymous, right, AA, they could do 12 months and they got about 10%, not recurring rate, right? Whereas now we're going to just make this even higher. So is that a fair summary, or did I miss that?
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, when you think about it, it takes a certain amount of reinforcement to change a habit. It could be a diet, it could be exercise, it could be shedding a really bad habit, possibly, or an addictive habit. But once you've changed that habit for a certain amount of time, you don't go back. Okay, you might blend a little bit. Okay, but you don't go 100% back. And so we're going to go into this. Everybody's talking about hybrid office, which is a blend of work from home, work near home, work at your corporate headquarters. It's a blend of 2 days, 2 days, 1 day, 1 day, 1 day, 1 day. It'll be a blend back and forth that meets the needs of your individuals and your companies. But nobody's going to get on a train and commute 2 hours every day again.
Excellent.
They won't do it. And they don't need to do it. And I think that's the issue. To get a good job, you don't have to do that anymore. Right. You might commute on Wednesdays to a team meeting, but the rest of the time you're going to work either from home or near home. And I think there's a big difference. And this is something that we see going on right now. Not everybody who is caught in this change has a suitable workplace in their home. You just mentioned 5 children, and I'm going, I can barely deal with a dog. Okay, so not everybody has the capacity, the space, the personality to deal from working from home. Maybe 1 day a week, no problem. But every day, no. So most people will migrate out of the permanent working from home and into a work near home. As we say today, as we look at facilities, we'd much rather build a facility or lease a facility on a bike path than on a metro path. We are looking in the secondary and tertiary markets to service our customers more now than in the central business district markets.
Excellent. Let's dive right into that so people understand that. Allwork.space. You can learn more about Frank Cottle. And Frank, I know you have another website too, which you can mention here as well. But how do you exactly help people and your customers? How do you serve businesses? How do you serve entrepreneurs and corporations to do this? Why don't you plug that right here, right now?
Well, allwork.space is a publication that we have, a global publication that's quite extensive. Our core company is actually alliancevirtualoffices.com, alliancevirtualoffices.com, and we create virtual officing programs on behalf of startups, small enterprises, legal, accounting, financial services professionals, global Fortune 1000 companies, government. We create programs that go into flexible workplace facilities, business centers, co-working centers, incubators, accelerators on a global basis, and manage the portfolio of offices for our client companies, large and small, to help them achieve a higher level of efficiency. We own those portfolios and have wholesale arrangements with our inventory. So think of the travel industry, and we don't believe there's such a thing as an office occupier anymore. We haven't for years. Way before COVID, we've been telling people that everyone is actually a traveler. They're not an occupier.
Excellent. So we're running out of time. So we're going to do a commercial real estate lightning round, because I don't want to miss for our commercial real estate listeners, as well as our capital gains tax solutions listeners. I mean, you said 195 projects before you kind of shifted from the real estate world to the technology world with remote working. And so, and maybe we can even have you back on another show to talk about all of those things. But for the first question on the lightning round, Frank, I'm just curious, what's the biggest frustration when it comes to the 1031 exchange or capital gains tax deferral options when selling highly appreciated businesses or real estate? What have you found there?
Limitation in choice. We didn't do too much 1031 in our current business model, but in a prior life during that yachting experience, I owned a lot of residential properties and went through a lot of 1031 exchanges back then. And I just say limitations in choice for me. Not always being able to find the right property at the right location at the right price, and kind of letting the tail wag the dog. And so I honestly gave up that approach, and I just look for the best, most opportunistic acquisition I can make. And I don't worry about the exit, because if I buy it right, I know I'll sell it right.
Yeah, very well said. We call it the shotgun wedding, right? Where you get engaged in 45 days and you got to get married in 180, right? That's you running around with your hair on fire, low inventory.
Yeah.
Sometimes the reason you're selling it because it's a good time to sell, but our parents taught us to sell high and buy low, not sell high and buy higher 180 days later with more debt. And again, letting the tax tail wag the investment dog. It just doesn't work all the time, right? In 2008, that's part of why people got hurt. They had overpaid, they had too much debt, and not enough liquidity or diversification. And here's the thing, they knew they were overpaying in 04, 05, 06, 07, but they felt like they had no other option except to do the 1031 exchange. And so here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions, we do offer something that's an alternative. It's a backup plan that eliminates the need for a 1031 exchange altogether. It's called a Deferred Sales Trust. And so for our listeners who are listening and resonate with what Frank is saying and what I'm saying, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. By the way, it works for public stock, private stock, cryptocurrency, primary homes, investment real estate, and it's the Netflix way of doing things. Take a look at capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Okay, so next question, Frank, is this. Knowing what you know now, if you can go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget you would make sure to tell yourself to do?
Dramatic pause there. That's a long ways back for me, my friend. What would I do differently? I think I would have chosen my partners more carefully. I think when you say, hey, I've got a guy and we're friends and we're going to start a business together. You're going to do something. It's really a marriage, and divorce can be ugly. So I think I would have been had more care in who I chose to do business with, financial partners, institutions. I took their money. Should I have the same with individual partners? Some of them have been wonderful and amazing, and some of them were less so. So I think that's one thing I would just say. Like, if you're choosing a mate, be very careful in how you do so.
What's the one question to help clarify choosing the right mate that you would made sure you would have asked that you perhaps didn't ask?
Oh, I have no idea, because every one of them is different. The circumstances and the conditions and the people. I don't think there's a one size fits all answer there. I think the sort of two things in my experience. Ask your wife, and that might sound funny, but another person that's very close to you can sometimes see things that you're looking at differently and have a profound impact. So if you have someone you're close to, I would ask them before making that kind of decision. The other thing, everybody says go with their gut. Go with your gut. What does it really feel? Did you feel good about this or feel bad about this? Did you do something you didn't really think you should do? Well, go with your gut sounds good, but only if you have enough experience in your gut to make it worthwhile, to make it really doing something. If you're experienced at something, you can go with that gut feeling a lot better than if you're inexperienced. And if you're not, fall back to my comment a minute ago of become the best student. Really do your research and study.
Amazing, Frank Cottle. This has been a real pleasure to connect with you, glean some wisdom, tons of wisdom, and to learn more about the remote working space. I'm going to ask one last question, and then we'll wrap it up and remind listeners where they can find you. After all your success and all the people you've helped, all the deals you've done, and the businesses you've grown, how do you stay centered in your values, Frank? And how do you stay encouraged to charge forward to reach new heights?
Oh, I think it really just comes down to enjoying what you do. Values are pretty simple. You either have them or you don't. If you do, then you shouldn't have to worry about it too much. But just keeping interested in things. I'm always intrigued with learning something new and then applying myself to it. I'm never concerned with yesterday. I'm only concerned with really today. Tomorrow will take care of itself if you do well today. So I'm very now oriented. What do we have to do today? And that means I'm probably more of a person focused on execution than I am on vision.
Excellent. Well, Frank Cottle, it's been more than a pleasure getting to know you a little bit here on the podcast. I want to remind our listeners you can find Frank at allwork.space as well. Frank, your other website you mentioned was the
AllianceVirtualOffices.com.
Perfect.
AllianceVirtualOffices.com.
Frank, I want to encourage you to keep using the gifts and talents you've given to being someone who perseveres, who solves challenges, who finds creative ways to build, and perhaps circumstances that some people won't see, right? And I appreciate your time and energy you've put into this podcast interview. And thanks. I also want to thank our listeners for listening to the episode of the Expert CRA Secrets podcast, where we believe most commercial real estate brokers, luxury realtors, they struggle with clarifying their passive income options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven brokerage strategy such as the EXP commercial model and purchasing investment real estate is the best way for you to grow your wealth. We're also streaming on capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Remember, we talked about the Deferred Sales Trust today. It's an amazing way to eliminate the need for the 1031 exchange. Also works for high-end primary homes, cryptocurrency. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to learn more about the Deferred Sales Trust. Please rate, review, subscribe. It means the world to us to share this with those who you believe it can be helpful for.